It's not usually my practice to disparage the speaker who preceded me. But last year, Chris had a book, and he gave it away, as Marty noted last night, and I bought it, and I have something similar to say to what Marty said. I bought it. I thought it was a really great book, and I made no money. My bank account did not increase. So I would just say with Chris's work, I would just say buyer beware. You know, I bought it so I could make a lot of money, and it just didn't work out.
Did you lose any money?
Huh?
Did you lose any money?
Well, I didn't have any money, so I didn't have any money to lose.
I think your first mistake was buying it when Marty was giving it away.
Yeah, that's maybe why I have no money, right? Anyway, then Marty agreed to have me talk about whatever it is, reflections on 3 decades of teaching. And I started to prepare this, and I got to a certain point where I wasn't satisfied with it, and I was going to revise it and present it here. And then I had certain mishaps, and the 2 main people that I would like to blame for this are Christian McBride and Travis. I had a ticket to go see Christian McBride on the night before I left Boulder, but it was a waitlist ticket, and I was about to sit down and revise my stuff, and the waitlist ticket came through, so I had to go see Christian McBride. And then last night after the presentations, Travis, knowing full well that Irish people will always say yes if you say, I'll buy you a couple drinks. So we went out, and by that time it was over. I had all this scotch in me, and I certainly wasn't going to go back to my Brooklyn hotel and revise my notes. And I got on the subway, and it was heading towards Brooklyn. And for people like me from Colorado, coming to New York is sort of like Alice in Wonderland, or Alice down the rabbit hole. And I got onto the subway. Very few people were on the subway, and there was this folder there sitting there on the seat, and there was a sign on it that said "Read me." So I picked it up and I started to read it.
Are you making this up?
I don't make things up. And so I started to read it, and it had some things in it that I thought would be appropriate for my talk. A little surprising, right? And Marty will also like this, because the title of the manuscript is A Species of Greenspanism, A Fairy Tale of Ideas. And the author of this thing is somebody called John Swifter. And at the beginning, Mr. Swifter quotes some dude named Mumford, Lewis Mumford. Apparently he wrote some book about cities, the city in history. Sterile academic knowledge, like a dangerous virus prudently killed and diluted, must, if we can judge by present experience, often give complete immunity against original thought or fresh experience for a whole lifetime. That seems rather pessimistic. Anyway, this thing is a piece of fiction, and I'm going to see if I can get through the first chapter before Tom cuts me off. How am I doing for time? Halfway done, probably. I haven't even started yet. Okay, so chapter 1 of this manuscript is entitled In Which O'Hara Waxes Melancholy and Remembers a Tale. Once upon a time, there was, living and working in the easternmost reaches of the great American desert, a man named Seamus Begorra O'Hara, who, involved in the teachable moment we will describe, found himself thinking of an old story in which a king heard from the spirits that all the water present in the kingdom would disappear, that new water would come from the sky, and that anyone who drank the new water would become crazy. The voice advised the king to gather as much of the old water as he could in his private cistern, for it said, a king, a king to ensure the well-being of his people should remain sane even if his subjects did not. And so the king gathered as much water as he could into his hilltop cistern, and one day the old waters all disappeared, evaporated, it seemed, by the great heat of the sun. And then the rains came to fill his subjects' reservoirs anew. And lo and behold, the people started acting in unaccountable ways, seeming to the king completely crazy, as he sat high in his isolate castle, drinking the old water and remaining sane. He would sometimes go down among the people to observe their actions and see how they behaved. And when he saw how crazy their actions had become, he would remonstrate with them, trying to awaken them to what had happened. They did not listen, of course. In fact, they shunned him and told him to go off and mind his own business. And slowly the kingdom progressed toward ruin as the still sane king sat alone through day and long day upon his hilltop. And though he felt himself to be pursuing a wise course, he became desperately lonely as weeks passed into months. In addition, he heard that many of his subjects, upset by what they took as his craziness, intended to overthrow him and kill him, considering him pathologically mad. Finally, feeling the acuteness of his loneliness and also fearing for his life as the agitation grew in the city, he went down among the people and drank the new water to see what changes would occur. And of course, once he drank the new water, he completely forgot what the spirits had advised about the water he had collected. He began to act just like his subjects, that is, in ways he would formerly have considered unaccountable and crazy. And from that day forward, the people of the kingdom regarded him as a madman who had been miraculously cured. So pondering thus one fine day, as winter turned slowly towards spring, and despite the resplendent Rocky Mountains sun sinking into the first wall of the mountains half a mile west of where he unceremoniously sat, O'Hara felt a kind of lonely melancholy that had not become more pleasant, even as it had become, over the years, more familiar. One might call it a kind of professional hopelessness, though in O'Hara's mind it got mingled with thoughts about the long and tedious decline of civilization, with the last word serving perhaps as euphemism, and the decline part, in O'Hara's view, self-evident. On the fine day in question, he fancied that he saw before him a sure sign of the decline, a somewhat unkempt and borderline surly student who seemed boneheadedly but not blissfully unaware of the demands and distinctions that O'Hara, born and raised in the Gutenberg era, found important. Though he felt less and less certain that such statements would do anything to halt the aforementioned decline, he kept saying to himself that his students needed to learn to write and think more clearly and precisely, to develop more awareness about language, and thus gain more control over their lives. To connect, he fondly hoped, the ways they used language to what went on in their lives and in le monde entier. He was, we might say, an idealist of sorts, though he found, more or less continually these days, that idealism did not bring bliss. Perhaps it had always been so. Are you signaling me yet?
Not yet.
Oh, cool. The student, a young fellow who called himself Pete, had come to go over one of his papers with O'Hara, or more precisely, he had come to complain, for O'Hara had given Pete a grade that Pete considered unacceptable. His feeling arising partly from a fact that he considered notable, though probably with his own self-interest in mind, he declined to mention it to O'Hara. That for the same paper he had received from an instructor named Helga Railsplitter an A- in praise for the clarity of his thought and the excellence of his prose style. O'Hara, who, Pete had convinced himself, didn't know as much as he seemed to think he knew, had given him a C, and, unbeknownst to Pete, considered that a great gift, for which he should receive praise, not censure. But Pete wanted an explanation. By the way, the fairy tale nature of this does not become evident until like chapter 3. I read the whole thing last night on the subway ride back home after Travis bought me that scotch and ruined my other presentation. Not that I like to blame other people for my problems, of course. So what's wrong with my paper? Pete demanded, with as much as a student can demand of someone higher in the academic hierarchy than himself. Let's look, said O'Hara, the aforementioned melancholy threatening to envelop him. Okay, said Pete, tell me what's wrong. Well, let's look at your first sentence. The issue behind the problem with the schools is the students. Yeah, said Pete. It makes no sense. What do you mean it makes no sense? I ran it through the grammar checker, and it said it was good. It said I was good to go. What do you want anyway? O'Hara gazed about his none too tidy office, located in a trailer sitting in an isolate splendor on a weed-infested lot just off the edge of the main campus. To make room for a coffee house type arrangement full of screens and video games, a kind of study center for those needing constant entertainment, the university had, at the beginning of the academic year, unceremoniously moved O'Hara from a comfortable ensconcement in the entrails of the campus to the barren borderlands. This is right. This is what happens, said O'Hara, who had often mused to himself, if you don't have a PhD, even if you have seniority in your program, 30 years of labor, and they put you, well, in a trailer on the outskirts of town. I think that is a veiled reference to that songwriter from northern Minnesota. What's the guy's name? Zimmerman. Yes. I mean, I don't know this Jonathan Swifter, so I'm not really sure. He refocused on the student. What do I want? I want you to make sense, Pete. Your first sentence doesn't. But O'Hara raised a palm and interrupted. Yes, I know, Pete, you ran it through the grammar checker. But I didn't say that the sentence contains a grammatical error. I said it makes no sense. Or more precisely, it has no content. Like I said, though, said Pete, the grammar checker said it's fine, right? But Pete, said O'Hara with an attempt at kindness, I can think of hundreds of grammatically correct sentences that make no sense or have no content. We've been over this in class. What do you mean? It makes perfect sense. The issue behind the problem is the students. Why doesn't it make sense? He thought again of Professor Railsplitter's grade, feeling empowered by it, convinced that O'Hara must be a moron of some sort, probably overeducated and knowing nothing worth knowing, or at least completely out of touch with everything, a statement Pete had made before about O'Hara, not noticing that his everything had, to put the matter mildly, a rather vague referent. Self-interest remained in the fore, though, and Pete held his tongue. O'Hara, looking over his reading glasses at Pete, looked over his reading glasses at Pete as Pete checked a message on his cell phone. Are you with me, Pete? Of course, just a sec. Several secs passed. Pete looked up at last. Okay, what were you saying? I wasn't saying anything, Pete. I was waiting. Oh, yeah, sorry. O'Hara paused, reflecting on the late afternoon sunlight, the junk-strewn lot outside, and what one might take as his lot in life. After a perhaps mournful sigh, he went on in as gentle a voice as he could muster. So then, Pete, what is the issue? Can you tell me? The students, said Pete, his patience seeming to wear a bit thin. O'Hara internalized his next sigh, wondering for a lost moment about the destiny, improperly so called, of the race, realizing his blunder. Like his student, he had used the abstraction to be abstraction form. What is the issue? Instead of putting his thoughts in operational form, and thus failing momentarily to practice what he preached. But he knew quite well from more years of experience than he wished to count, that if he responded using the propositional form that had led to the problem in the first place, he and the student would circle forever in the cold and unpleasant darkness like Pluto and its moon, with the underworld beckoning in the cold expanse of the parsecs beyond. As O'Hara had preached many times to his students, attentive or not, no abstraction can ever be another abstraction. Certainly idea structures, like problems and issues, can never be molecular structures, like students, for the former arise in the craniums and minds of mortals, and, for all O'Hara knew, of dolphins, orcas, and octopi, whereas the latter gambol about on quadrangles, hoping for the best. But look, Pete, said O'Hara at last, you haven't told the reader what you want to discuss. The students cannot be the issue. You remember what we said many times in class. Yeah, said Pete. Where do problems and issues arise? Where do they arise? Yes, do they arise in the intentional world or the extensional world? The what? Do they exist, Pete, in our minds, or do they have tangible existence in the external world? Well, in the world, obviously. I don't think so, said O'Hara. Why not? Doesn't the world have all sorts of problems? Well, people talk that way, but have you ever seen a problem? Of course I have. I doubt it. Oh, come on, Professor O'Hara. Instructor. Huh? Instructor O'Hara. I am not a professor, Pete. What's the diff? Said Pete. The diff is about 50 grand a year and a lot of job security. But back to your sentence. I doubt that if you've ever seen a problem. We have discussed this in class. Oh, yeah. What did we say? We said that the word problem refers to a conclusion you've come to, not to the events about which you've come to that conclusion. We've also said that issue refers to a question about which informed people might disagree. But, said Pete, what does that mean? How are we doing? 1 minute. Fine. Well, I'll just go as far as I can go. Well, let's talk about problems first. Ask yourself this, Pete. Why do we so often find that two people looking at the same set of facts come to different conclusions about those facts? At least let me get through the part about the Broncos. It's not very far. Pete's face took on a vacant look. I must have missed that stuff, he said, glancing again at his buzzing cell phone. Pete, are you here? Yeah, of course I'm here. What were we saying? What were we saying? Yeah, what were we saying? We were saying, O'Hara opened his palms in a welcoming gesture. I forget, I spaced out for a minute there. I had a message. Yeah, I noticed. So, I forget. Where were we? I guess the Broncos part is further down than I thought. The Denver Broncos, by the way, they're a football team that exists out there someplace in the West. I guess I'm out of time, and Tom's going to kick me off stage unceremoniously. Thank you.